Hi friends, welcome back to another video. Today's video, I'm so happy to be filming it because it's all about books that are inspired by my love for Studio Ghibli. If you've been watching my videos, you'll know just how much it means to me. So today I thought it'd be fun for me to recommend books that are whimsical and magical, just like Studio Ghibli films are. When I think about Studio Ghibli films, I feel like they're so whimsical and fanciful, and I actually have brought up the definition of whimsical. So it means playfully quaint or fanciful, especially in an appealing and amusing way. So today I want to be recommending you books that are playful, that have a lot of magic in them, some very strong folklorish elements to them as well. Hopefully if you adore Ghibli movies as much as I do, then you'll find some books that are similar in terms of the atmosphere or the vibes to it. And if you've never watched a Studio Ghibli film, now is your sign to go and watch one. I personally adore Whisper of the Heart. That's one of my favourite all-time Ghibli films, but of course Howl's Moving Castle, Kiki's Delivery Service, Arrietty, they're all such amazing movies, so I do recommend checking them out. But before we dive into the video, I want to share with you all today's sponsor, Simple Retro. If you haven't heard of Simple Retro before, they're a wonderful company selling some beautiful vintage inspired clothes, and a lot of their clothes are so perfect for those who love the cottagecore aesthetic as well. In last week's video, a lot of you guys actually asked me which blouse I was wearing, and it's this beautiful emerald green blouse, or I suppose it's more like forest green actually, with gorgeous lily of the valley embroidery and pearl buttons, but it's the convallaria embroidered blouse, I believe. I'll make sure to include all the details down below, and I love it, so I'm really glad you guys love it as well. So today this is one of their blouses. Oh, I love it so much. It's so beautiful. I believe this one is the Gianna blouse, with this gorgeous collar detail and of course puffy sleeves. I know I'll be wearing this so much this spring and summer. It's a classic white top but with some extra fun details, and I've really worn it to Exeter, so I know I'll be getting some really great use out of this one. The thing that I picked out this time round is all white. I think it's because it's getting hotter now in the UK. I just wanted some really lovely staple white top. So this next piece is the Briella top. I just love how dainty the lace edging is, and this wonderful almost corset-like style where it sort of tapers down here and there's a lovely hem. The material at the front here is a little bit stiffer, so it will give a really nice shape, I think, when you wear it, and a nice silhouette. It's such a lovely addition to my wardrobe. Next up is this gorgeous tank top. It's the Esme tank top, and I've already worn this out as well, hence why there's no tag anymore. I love that this one feels a little bit more wholesome and cozy. I love the thicker lace embroidery. It also has some wonderful shape at the bottom here. But yeah, it's just such a cute little top to wear in summer. Last but not least is this absolutely beautiful white dress. This is the Talia romantic dress, I believe. I love how the top part here has these really cute little ribbons down at the front. I love the lace details. I honestly think Simple Retro have the best lace detailings on their clothing. That was everything that Simple Retro so kindly sent me. And if you'd like to purchase anything from their website, don't forget to use the code Ahya10 for 10% off your purchase. Thank you so much to Simple Retro for sponsoring today's video. And now let's dive in and see which books are whimsical and magical like Studio Ghibli. This very first book is by Ash Oakenthorne by Melissa Harrison, and it follows three little people who wake up from their winter hibernation. They live inside an old ash tree, and when they wake up they realise it's spring, and normally they love springtime, but unfortunately they discover that one of them is actually physically starting to fade away. So the three of them make a very difficult decision to leave their beloved tree and the countryside, and they go on a bit of an adventure to a place called the Hive to figure out what is happening to them. So I included this book in this video because I felt like it really reminded me a lot of Arrietty, with the small people, with its gorgeous descriptions of nature. You know, they're living surrounded by nature. They're talking to birds who are like 3 times the size of them. It has a very strong whimsical and playful feel to it, but it also has a very strong environmentally conscious message behind it, and how important it is to take care of our surroundings. And I feel like that's really quite in line with a lot of what Hayao Miyazaki tries to present in a lot of his films. You can really clearly tell that Melissa Harrison has such a love, a deep and pure love for nature, just like you can in Miyazaki's gorgeous artworks as well. So I really do recommend this if you love that aspect of Studio Ghibli movies. The next book I have is Glow Rushes by Roberto Piumini. This book is translated from the Italian, and it follows a boy who is very sick, and he has a rare, rather debilitating condition that prevents him from seeing any sunlight or being exposed to sunlight. But because this father loves his son so much, he wants to provide the best for him and show the outside world. So this incredible painter is summoned to draw wonderful depictions of nature all across this little boy's room. It is, as you can imagine, rather sad, and I feel like a lot of Ghibli films often have this very melancholic tune to it. A lot of their films make my heart hurt, and in that way it reminded me a lot of The Wind Rises. You know that scene where the wind is blowing and she's painting in the middle of a field with Jiro? This book feels like The Wind Rises, in that there's an appreciation for the natural world, painting, the beauty of art, and how art can heal and help people to communicate as well. It's very subtle, but it has a wonderful sort of magical realism-esque aroma to the whole story. This next book is Eva Evergreen, or Ava Evergreen Semi-Magical Witch. It's another middle grade book, and it's a fantasy book that really strongly reminds me of Kiki's Delivery Service. Essentially, we follow a girl called Eva, and before she turns 13, she has to gain the ranking of a novice witch. Whilst for most boys and girls it's a very simple test, Eva really struggles because she only has a pinch of magic. Now, it's crucial that she passes this test, because if she doesn't, she'll lose her magic forever. And so as part of one of her quests, she is sent to a distant town called Eerie. Eerie is a coastal town, and it's been facing some awful storms, and so she decides that she really wants to be of help. Of course, the people of Eerie were hoping to have a more powerful witch than a semi-magical witch, and so they're very disappointed, but Eva is determined to prove herself to the villagers by setting up a magical repair shop. I remember this book having some incredible descriptions of food and baking. I believe there is a bakery involved in it, a bit like Kiki's Delivery Service. So if any of that sounds appealing to you, and if you loved Kiki's Delivery Service and how whimsical and magical and light-hearted, but also it has a little bit of its serious moments as well, then I do recommend this book. Okay, moving on from the middle grade books, the next book is called Lonely Castle in the Mirror, and I don't have a physical copy of this because I finished this book 2 days ago through Libby, but as soon as I started reading it, I knew that I had to include it in this video. The book is by Mizuki Sugimura, I believe, and it's all about 7 students who are not attending school for various different reasons. Each student is avoiding going to school, and one day each of them discover that the mirrors in their rooms are glowing, and this mirror acts as a portal into a huge sort of mansion-like castle. In this castle they meet a person, or a little girl really, called the Wolf Queen, and she has a wolf mask on her face, and she tells them that if they find a key within the span of like a year or so, one of their wishes will be granted. It has some very strong dark fairy tale aspects to it. The Wolf Queen calls each of the students her Little Red Riding Hoods, and one of the terms of agreement is that they have to leave before 5 o'clock, otherwise they will be devoured by the wolf. As I was reading this book, I kept thinking about how much I wanted to see this book being adapted into a Ghibli film. I never actually finished watching when Marnie was there, and I plan to watch it properly this year, but I think it kind of reminded me of when Marnie was there. I believe the author wanted to write this book because she wanted it to open up the doorway for more talks about mental health. So I would really recommend reading some trigger warnings before, because it does address some very difficult social topics. Of course, Ghibli films also address a lot of social issues as well. So if you like that about their movies, then maybe you'll really appreciate this book as well. Next up is A Far Wilder Magic by Alison Saft, and I included this here because I felt like the atmosphere of the book really was very reminiscent of Princess Mononoke. This book is all about a girl called Maggie. Maggie is a bit of a social outcast. One day when she's out in the forest or the woods, she comes across a legendary creature called the howl. Once people find out that the howl has been discovered in this part of the country, the half-moon hunt quickly follows. Whoever captures the howl will gain riches and fame and wealth that will sort them out for the rest of their life, and so Maggie desperately wants to enter. Unfortunately, you can only enter as a pair, and one person needs to be the sharpshooter and another needs to be the alchemist. Maggie, as a sharpshooter, she can't fulfill the position of the alchemist. On the other hand, we have Wes Winters, and I love him so much. But Wes has been studying alchemy all his life. Unfortunately, he has been pretty much getting fired from every apprenticeship that he's ever had. So this hunt opportunity is his very last chance to prove himself and to be able to provide for his family and his sisters as well. So the two of them pair up together, and it's about them overcoming their differences to help each other out. And I included it because, like I mentioned, it gives very strong Mononoke vibes in that it's set in a very dark and deep forest. This book specifically has very gothic vibes in terms of the town, and the setting is very misty. There's an old empty manor with creaky floors. It addresses the darker elements like Princess Mononoke does in terms of the relationships of humans and animals and the natural world again. So I think if you're willing to read something of a darker fantasy with a great romance in it and some wonderful atmospheric descriptions, then yes, I really recommend A Far Wilder Magic. Next is Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater, and if you are a Howl and Sophie lover, then of course you have to check out this book. This book is literally the definition of whimsical. This book follows a girl called Dora Ettings, and Dora was cursed as a child by a fairy, and so she's left with only half a soul. This means that she really doesn't have any filter, she has no fear or embarrassment. Dora ends up accompanying her cousin to the London season, and it's here where she bumps into Elias Wilder, who is a law sorcier. Elias Wilder is slightly grumpy. He has that moody howl atmosphere going on. As she spends more and more time with this rather uncouth man, Adora ends up getting sucked into the affairs of the fairy realm, and so the two of them go on quests and try to uncover what on earth is going on. I absolutely fell in love with our main characters. They have such an incredible relationship. It's so fun and sweet and tender, but because they're both so witty and sarcastic, it's hilarious to read and see how their relationship develops and grows. It has some light fantasies, a great romance. I really don't know what there isn't to love about this book. This book is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, and it's by Ahya. This is a YA fantasy story, I think, and it's quite honestly, if a historical K-drama movie met Spirited Away, then I think it would give birth to this book. Mina is our main character, and she ends up sacrificing herself to the sea god by quite literally plunging herself into the middle of a very stormy sea. Mina does this with the hopes of saving her homeland because there's a legend that the sea god will stop ravaging storms if he meets his true bride. So every year a girl from this town, this village, is sacrificed to the sea god, and this year Mina volunteers to do it herself. So we follow Mina as she dives into this crazy underwater world. It's a very liminal realm, almost like Spirited Away, where you're in an in-between liminal state of the human realm and the spiritual realm, and where it comes together a little bit. Mina is very much like Chihiro in Spirited Away in that she is transported into this realm where there are very, very strange mythical creatures. She meets a whole cast of really interesting Korean folklore inspired characters. Because this book takes place under the sea, it's incredibly atmospheric and moody, and there's something so dreamy about it. Oh, I forgot to mention the romance in this book is also very, very endearing as well. So if you love K-dramas, if you love historical K-dramas in particular, and you love Spirited Away, then maybe check The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. I've been wanting an excuse to talk about this book for so long, and it's The Delicate Dream Department Store by Mie Lee. I mentioned this actually in one of my very first ever videos, I think, but I haven't been able to talk about it since. So I'm very excited to introduce you all if you've never read of it or read it before. The premise of this book is that when we dream, our collective subconscious minds drift off into an actual place when we dream. In this mysterious place, people line up to buy dreams in department stores. And so we follow Penny, who has recently been hired to work at a very, very famous and well-established department store of dreams called the Delicate Dream Department Store. This department store, each floor is filled with different kinds of dreams. There are different categories of dreams that you can buy and then purchase and then dream that night. So it's just such a fun and whimsical concept. I had so much fun reading it. Of course, humans are the only creatures who dream. Animals dream too, so you find animals queuing up to buy their latest dreams as well. I loved reading about how different department stores and different dream makers specialized in different kinds of dream. You meet a character who specializes in nightmares, another who specializes in great landscapes and traveling kind of dreams. The entire experience while reading this book felt like I was floating on a cloud. It felt like I was dreaming as I was reading this book. The way that you get to meet different workers at the department store and seeing them all do their duties and their chores to make it run efficiently is quite evocative of the hotel in Spirited Away, I think. Oh, it's just such a whimsical and delightful book. I really recommend reading it. The penultimate book I want to share with you all is Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa. and it's translated from the Japanese by Eric Ozawa. I wanted to pick this book out to honour my favourite Ghibli film, Whisper of the Heart. Now in that film, if you haven't watched it before, we follow a girl called Shizuku, and Shizuku wants to become a writer. She has a very deep love for reading and she reads multiple books from the library and ends up, because of that, coming across a boy called Seiji. And so I wanted to share with you all a book that is all about book lovers and one that really treasures reading. Days at the Bodhisaki Bookshop follows Takako, who is 25 years old and she is extremely burnt out. Takako doesn't really know what she wants to do with life anymore, so when her uncle invites her over to stay with him, she hesitantly accepts his offer. Now Takako's uncle is a little bit eccentric and he owns a little bookshop in the heart of Tokyo, I believe, but it's a bookshop that specialises in second-hand books. So when Takako arrives, she is very much greeted by piles and piles of books and the smell of old musty books. She isn't really a reader though, so at first she neglects those books and doesn't really know what to do with her surroundings. But because she doesn't leave the bookshop and spends all her days there, Takako ends up picking up a book, and so begins her love for reading. Like Whisper of the Heart, this book very much explores how books can help somebody to find meaning and purpose in life, how it can help you to be motivated to find a purpose in your life as well. So it's not the same as Whisper of the Heart, it's actually very, very different, but I did want to include it for all of you book lovers out there because I think it's a very precious and sweet tale. Last but not least, we have The Easy Life in Kamusari by Shion Miura, and I don't even know the number of times I've mentioned this in my videos now, but it just goes to show how much I enjoyed the book. It follows Yuki Hirano, who has just finished secondary or high school, and because he doesn't know what he wants to do with his life, his parents end up secretly enrolling him into this forestry training program. The program takes place deep in the hearts of Japanese forests and mountains, and so Yuki, coming from Yokohama, he just has no desire whatsoever to do this program, but he has no other choice. After spending a year though surrounded by cedar trees, surrounded by the very quirky individual characters that Yuki gets to meet in Kamusari village, he ends up falling in love with the place and grows a very deep appreciation for the art of forestry. The reason why I included this book though in the video is that it draws a lot on Japanese folk tales and Japanese legends. This book has very strong magical realism elements to it. It features the villagers telling Yuki all about how children from this village would be spirited away by the mountain gods and goddesses of Kamusari, and so it's very magical. It has very fantastical elements to it as well, and for that reason it again reminds me of Spirited Away, the movie. Anyways, that concludes today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. I'd love to know if you have any Studio Ghibli-esque books to recommend, because you know I love Ghibli movies. Thank you again to Simple Retro for sponsoring today's video, and I'll see you all in next week's video. Bye!